Welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is serendipity, which is another variation on synchronicity. But serendipity is these quote unquote chance occurrences that are in alignment with our intentions and what we're up to. So it should be fun conversation. I love talking about that kind of magic, what I call winks from the universe. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the motion, the pressure, the temperature, and the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So serendipity, just really lovely sort of, well, as I said, winks from the universe that that are just these affirmations, confirmations of your intention. When you're listening, you sort of find yourself in the path of these wonderful, wonderful occurrences. And I think that it's sort of an indicator of being in the flow. So I'll just share a story that's an example that was really fun from yesterday. Yesterday was just like that all the way around. So I've been on a mission to clear out extra stuff, to make more space, to, just weed out, or as somebody else has termed it, to edit my life, to get rid of extraneous stuff. And I had this collection of magazines, of Wired magazines from like 2001, and I didn't want to throw them out. They were in great condition and they're interesting, and the truth is that I'm never going to read them. So I finally was able to find a place that would allow me to donate them, and it's a thrift store that I go to with some regularity and have found all kinds of wonderful treasures. So it was wonderful to be able to donate something back to them. So yesterday was the day to, I'd been trying to think about how I could sell these things, and I finally said, okay, that's it. I'm just going to give them away. So I packed everything up in the car. I had 8 boxes to go take to donate, and not just of magazines, but mostly of magazines. And so I drove to the place and I donated them, and I decided to go check inside to see if perhaps they might have teacups, because my goddaughter is getting married and we're having a shower for her, and she wanted a tea party. And in her vision of it, it had these wonderful little teacups that were mismatched and whatever. So the last several times I've been in thrift stores, I've kept my eyes open for teacups without much of an option. And we needed about 30 teacups and saucers. And so I went in, and don't you know it, they had so many teacups and saucers that I was able to get what we needed for a really wonderful price. And they're beautiful, and it just sort of fulfills the dream that my goddaughter has. And so that's very exciting. And it was just delightful, to go in and to be able to find these things. And I think what happens is that we often, it's a mundane thing, right? But it's also, I have been looking for teacups, and here was a day that I finally felt inspired to clear out all the stuff, and there were the teacups. So it was like an instant reward in its way. And I'm just so delighted to be able to fulfill this vision for her, So what was the listening? The listening was, today's the day that I take this stuff. Now, I have been able to do that for more than a month with flexibility, but yesterday was the day, and yesterday was the day that they had this incredible selection of teacups and saucers. So I maybe I should have called today teacups and saucers. But the thing is that we have these kinds of winks from the universe all the time. I might not have put those things together to say, oh, wow, there was an impulse in me that I paid attention to that said, today's the day to deal with this thing that you've been avoiding for a really long time. And I listened, and look what fell into my path. And along the same idea, for further in the day, a friend of mine asked if I wanted to join them for a walk after dinner. So we went out walking to this place near me, and I said, oh, there's this place that's going to open up that's going to be a gluten-free bakery, and let's go check it out. And so we walked over there, and the guy whose bakery it is was there, and we ended up chatting for a good 15 minutes at least, to hear about what he's up to. And he's going to be doing cooking classes, baking classes and whatnot. He's also a chef. And so it was really, really delightful. Again, another wink from the universe and acknowledgement. And the thing is that these things happen all the time, these wonderful serendipity sorts of events, and or quote unquote coincidences. But when we're listening, when we pay attention, because my friend and I went walking in a place that we hadn't gone before. So, so on some level, she was listening. It was her suggestion. And that as we are more connected, as we let go of all the things that might be distracting us, or are able to allow them to just be, to expand and include those things and allow them to just be, then we open ourselves to all kinds of messages that may be occurring on an other than conscious level. And this connects back to what we were talking about a couple days ago regarding communication, because communication, more than half of communication is listening. And when we are connected, or when we're in the flow, when we're present, we're better able to listen, to hear the messages, to be able to receive the information that we then respond to. And it occurs to me that we are receiving information on many, many different levels, a number of which are not in our conscious awareness. So when we're communicating with someone, when we're in someone's presence, particularly, we're aware of all different kinds of inputs above and beyond the words that are being spoken. We're hearing the tonality, we're aware of the person's breath, their eye movements, their facial expressions, their the way they're holding their bodies. All of these things are communications that we are receiving that we may not be processing consciously, but they're registering for us. So Rosalind says our brains are wired to filter out non-important stuff. Exactly. And there's the misperception that our brains are wired to receive, but typically our brains are filtering mechanisms. So the idea is, how do we open ourselves up to be able to receive more of this valuable information that is available? So Rosalind continues, so maybe we make space for what's important, and when we look for signs, we'll see them. Yeah, so the thing that you're talking about is making space. And that's a really, really important thing. How do we make space for all these wonderful serendipitous situations to emerge? And I think it is by being responsive. So I'm trying to think of when we look at birds, for instance, and their migratory patterns, they're receiving information, they're picking up on information that is helping to guide their flight path, right? That is moving them from one place to another, where they can locate one place to another. Oh, excuse me. We can even think of it as a GPS, right? When we listen to the GPS or watch the GPS, whatever it is, we're getting information about where to go. And I think that we get these communications on all kinds of levels, and we're often not aware. So for instance, like yesterday, I woke up with, I'm taking this stuff today. Like, today's the day. That's what I woke up with. Today's the day. And it was interesting because it wasn't even hemming and hawing about it. It was just waking up knowing today's the day. And so had I taken it the day before, the teacups might not have been there. I didn't ask when they arrived, but we do get these messages. We get messages all the time, and it's so important to pay attention. And when we do pay attention, oftentimes magic happens. So sometimes I have an impulse to say, okay, got to go to the grocery store, like out of nowhere. Like, now is the time to go and get the groceries I've needed, right? And when I get those messages, you don't know what's in store. You often don't even recognize it as a message. It's just like, okay, I'm this needs to be done. I'm going to do it now. So I think as we allow ourselves to clear our energetic field of all the static, all the noise, if we are able to better tune ourselves to our clear channels within ourselves, to use the radio metaphor, to if we're able to tune in on the station, then we get a clearer transmission, right? We get clearer information coming through. And the fascinating thing to me as I'm thinking about it, or one of them, is that we respond to that information without necessarily being alert to the fact that it's a message coming through. You know, it's just like, okay, time to do this today. But why today? Why today instead of all the other days that we could have done this? Why all of a sudden do we have this resolve that we didn't have before? And so I was talking to another friend yesterday who is teaching kids in school designing and web development and social media stuff. And she was talking about how the doing is so important. And yet she also talked about how the thinking was really important, like the presencing. And then and this person's highly creative and brilliant at solving problems. I mean, designers, that's what they do, is they're problem solvers. They're working with puzzles. You know, here are the requirements and how do we meet them and how do we fulfill all these different objectives with this thing. And it's a very creative process. This person's highly creative. And it was interesting because she was talking about the doing and how, you know, you just have to keep doing. And for her, being in motion is something that is really supportive to her process. And yet she was talking about how sometimes she's thinking and it looks like she's not doing, but she's being in that creative moment. She's sort of in that time transcendent space of generating something new, of allowing all the pieces to fit together. And then what pops out is something magnificent. And, you know, we're synthesizing. So oftentimes we will chew on an idea, like it's there in the background. And oftentimes we don't come up with a solution until we're distracted, and it gives our mind a chance to synthesize, and then bam, something shows up that is a solution that we hadn't imagined previously. Sometimes it'll show up in dreams, which also can be communications. So I remember this dream I had years and years ago when I was in college, and I just was kind of looking for direction and trying to figure out where I was going with things. And I had this dream, and in the dream, I was doing bronze sculpture. And I was in art school at the time. Now, I hadn't done bronze sculpture. I didn't really know anything about it, but it was fascinating because what I did know put together all the skills that I already had, which were all skills that were applicable to working in bronze, and said, oh, this is a really good solution. Now, I could have just let that dream go by, but it was really powerful and potent. And so I went to the person who taught bronze sculpture, and I said, I want to be in your class. And I was, and that's what I ended up graduating with, was a show from work that in bronze that I did. And so our awareness is picking up all kinds of information. Our other than conscious awareness is picking up all kinds of information and synthesizing things and generating things. And a big part of our ability to do that, I think, is enhanced as we allow ourselves to be more present, to quiet the static, the noise, the mind noise that we all have, the internal conversations that are making commentaries on everything that's happening all the time, making commentaries on ourselves, making commentaries about others, making commentaries about the world, the circumstances, all of these things. And when we are able to maybe not silence it, but to allow it to fade into the background, we then have a greater capacity to hear the subtle whispers, often subtle whispers, and often pretty blatant shouts about what we're actually being called toward. So there's a whole lot more power in moving toward something than there is moving away from something else. More power to create, shall we say. There may be more incentive to move away from something, even when you don't know what you're moving toward. But if you're wanting to create, or if your desire is to create something powerful and in alignment with your intentions, then it's preferable to move toward an intention rather than away from this, because you don't know, the likelihood is if you're moving away from this, you may be moving into something that is equally as distasteful. So as we find more spaciousness within ourselves, as we allow the static to fade, we can allow ourselves to be moved more directly by those impulses that are truly serving our higher intention. I was listening to a replay of one of our conversations, and it happened to have been about trust. And one of the things that I said in that was that so much of the trust is kind of retrospective. As we look back on our lives, I would bet, because I see this in my life, and I would bet you can see it in yours. If you look at all these weird connections, like how you met this person and they introduced you went to an event, you met this person, and that person ended up introducing you to this other person who introduced you to somebody else who provided you with an opportunity that never would have happened if it weren't for, these weird interconnections of people and places and things. And if you look back on it, the craziness of the order of it is just kind of miraculous and magical and unfathomable in its way. Like, it's not something that we would necessarily construct. But when we have an intention, my working hypothesis is that when we have an intention, the universe conspires to fulfill that intention. And I think that intention is different than a want. or a need. Because a want and a need often are affirming the lack of that thing. But when we have an intention, it's like the serendipity, the synchronicity that occurs is inexplicable from a rational vantage point. And there's some, I delight in that so fully, I have to say. I find that the spark that flames, that fans the fire or fans the flame of delight for me, and the joy in living, to see how all these things come together, and to trace back those threads in this magical tapestry of our lives. So if you pay attention, I'll bet you'll find some of these synchronicities that you overlooked just as mundane occurrences. I could have just not noticed that. It might have been just like, okay, so here I am. I decided to come and deliver this stuff today, and I'll go and check the thrift store, and oh, good, here they have teacups. But to notice that, hey, they have the teacups you've been looking for over weeks and weeks. Now you're here today of all days, and here are your teacups. So Rosalind says, if I'm craving something like wishing my partner would act a certain way, I find ways to fill that myself or embody that space for others. You know what? There's such wisdom in that, Rosalind. That's beautiful. So when we're wishing our partner would act a certain way, what's happening is we're often projecting not just our need, but projecting something about ourselves. So the richness of you embodying that space for others is creating space for your partner potentially to respond in the way that you desire. Who knows? But I think that's brilliant. Really, really brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's it for today. So thank you all for being here. It is such a privilege and joy to be able to share this time together. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And Rosalind says, to walk on the rough road, it's easier to put shoes on compared to smoothing out the road. I love it, Rosalind. Brilliant, absolutely. And I encourage all of you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living Facebook pages. And until next time, so much love to you.